All right. So to get us started, I'd love to hear from the panelists a little bit about who they are, their background, where they went to undergrad, their major, and what got them interested in PA school. So I'll have each of them introduce themselves. And after that, I have a couple of questions just to get us started. And afterwards, for students, if you have questions, you are welcome to type them in the chat and we will, go through, answer all of your questions. Or if you'd prefer to unmute yourself and ask a question, we can do that as well. So let's go ahead and start with Kathy Parker. Kathy, do you mind sharing a little bit about yourself, where you went to undergrad, what you majored in, and what got you interested in being a PA?
Sure. So my name's Kathy, everybody. Nice to meet you. I am originally from Knoxville, Tennessee. I went to Clemson for undergrad, actually, and I knew I was interested in math and science, and I ended up majoring in biomedical engineering and ended up moving back to Knoxville after undergrad to work at DeRoyal Industries, which is a medical company in Knoxville, and worked as an engineer, a product development engineer there for about 4 years. So I kind of took the non-traditional route as far as PA school. So I worked there for 4 years and really liked the medical side of my job, but not so much the engineering aspect of it. And I wish I had really known about PA and physician assistants as a career in undergrad, because I really did not. And so I started kind of looking around at other options for jobs and talked to a lot of people in Knoxville and shadowed a lot of medical people trying to figure out what route I wanted to take. And so then I kind of took a leap and quit my job and took some prereqs to apply to PA school and started working as a medical assistant to get like the clinical hours, and went to PA school in 2019, graduated last year in 2021. And I've been working, I actually live in New Jersey. So I went to PA school in Philadelphia and I live in New Jersey now. And I work at in trauma surgery at a hospital up here. And I started back in October. So I've been there about four or 5 months now.
Thank you so much, Kathy. We're also joined by a couple of current PA students from LMU, Isabel, Elijah, and Taylor. Would you all mind introducing yourselves, where you went to undergrad, how you got interested in PA school, and how you ended up deciding that LMU was the right fit for you all?
Okay. So I'm Tamara Taylor. I'm originally from Birmingham, Alabama. And I grew up, my mom was a nurse, so I was always interested in medicine, but I didn't want to be like her, but I also knew I didn't want to be a doctor. So my junior year of high school, I found about PA. So all the way through undergrad, I knew I wanted to go to PA school after. So I went to Tuskegee University in Tuskegee, Alabama, and I studied biology pre-health. And that really helped me get all of my prereqs. And then throughout the summers of each school year, I got hands experience, so like cardiology and like working with babies. And then I wanted to get out of Alabama, so I applied to schools in Tennessee and Georgia. And my interview here just was really, it was just really good and comfortable, and I liked it. It was a surgical specialty and not too far from home, but far away enough. So that's how I ended up here.
Okay. Hello, my name is Elijah Jones. I am from Louisville, Kentucky, and I graduated from the University of Louisville in 2018 with my Bachelor of Science in Exercise Science. I became interested in becoming a PA or going to PA school. When I was a sophomore in undergrad, I started scribing in the ER in Louisville, and many of the providers I scribed for were PAs, and they spoke highly of the profession. They loved their schooling, and I looked into it then. And I switched from pre-PT to pre-PA and began taking all the other courses for PA school. After undergrad, I worked as a CNA, PT/OT tech. I shadowed multiple PAs around Louisville. And then I just began applying to many schools in Kentucky, outside of Kentucky, Tennessee. And then my interview with LMU was super I felt safe and that they wanted me. So this was ultimately why I chose this program.
I'm Isabel. I'm from Chattanooga. I went to undergrad at UT, so not too far from home. And I was a chemistry major at first, and I was on the medical school track. In high school, I really wanted to be a PA, but my dad told me I couldn't go to UT if I wanted to be a PA. So I told him I'd go to medical school, but then junior year, I decided that I didn't like the chemistry major and that I really wanted to still do PA school. So I changed to kinesiology. I started working at an ENT here to get my hours. And I chatted in a few other specialties over the summers. And then I applied to LMU because I knew that I didn't want to leave Tennessee because I'm very much of a homebody. So I applied to LMU here and LMU in Harrogate, and both the interviews were amazing. And I ended up choosing the Knoxville one because I love the Knoxville area and the surgical specialty.
Thank you all so much. It's great to hear all the varying backgrounds and majors that you've all pursued. And that kind of leads me to my next question is major selection for an undergraduate student can definitely be a stressful experience, especially if you are considering something in the pre-health field. And it's great to see that you've all pursued varying majors. So what advice would you share with current students about major selection and how that plays a role in applying to PA programs? And anyone can feel free to jump, or we could go in order like we usually do, whatever it makes sense.
I would just make sure that you're choosing a major that encompasses the credentials that are required for PA school, and then also be sure to check the PA schools that you're interested in, because that's one thing about PA school compared to medical school is all the schools pretty much require something different. And I wouldn't spread yourself like too thin trying to take like this one class that's maybe just it for one school, unless that's your dream school, because you really want to focus on doing good in the ones that are required for all the schools.
Yeah, I have the same advice. Make sure you look up all the schools that you're interested in, look at their required classes, because many schools, they have different requirements. For me, as a pre-PT, my first 2 years of undergrad, they had similar courses as the PA school, but also adding organic chemistry. So I ended up taking organic chemistry. And some PA programs, they require Orgo 2 and then another lab with that. So just deciding factors that way.
Yeah. I really wouldn't add anything different. Just go ahead and like make sure you take the prereqs. Preferably not the last semester because that'd be stressful so early on if you can.
I would say don't do engineering unless if you actually want to go to PA school. I had some kids in my class who did engineering as an undergraduate degree because they thought that that would look competitive, in their application. And I feel like unless you use that degree, like I did, I guess, like they said, it doesn't matter as long as you meet those prereqs. So do what you're interested in. Don't do what you think will look good on paper. Just meet all those requirements. And if there's just one school that has a random genetics class or something that won't really fit into your schedule, I mean, there's a lot of schools out there. And so unless it's your dream school, like she said, I would just try to get a broad overview to be able to apply to the majority of schools that you can. Don't kill yourself for one school. I actually had a lot of trouble because a lot of the schools had a deadline of like within 5 years that you took certain classes. And, I was the old person applying to classes. So that actually moved my route of where I applied to schools based on, how long I was able to have taken, because I wasn't going to go back and retake like Bio 101 or something. So yeah, just try to keep it in mind, but don't kill yourself over, just try to take the prereqs and then let that lead you to where it fits.
That's great advice. Yeah, it definitely seems like, especially based on your experiences, it's less about what the title of your major is. It's more about making sure you're getting those prerequisite courses completed. And sometimes they can like naturally fit into the major that you're pursuing, but it's okay if they don't. You just need to make sure you're completing them. Would you say when students are going through the process of deciding if PA school is the right fit for them, should they start looking at different PA programs early? Or how would you kind of approach that suggestion for undergraduate students? Like when should they start looking at PA programs?
I would say as soon as you are interested, because different schools require different amounts of patient contact hours. And honestly, I think that's like the really big thing they look at is how much experience you have. Some schools require 2,000, 1,500. So the sooner you know that, then you can go ahead and set up internships or different things like that. So in addition to the prereqs, that's really helpful to know ahead of time.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of did it opposite because I was decided like junior year changing paths. So I just looked at all the schools that I already had the classes for. I thought it was really nice. Like the kinesiology major, I was able to fit all the classes in without even having to take extra classes outside the major. But then I kind of had to do my shadowing hours based off like what I already had, because there was not enough time to go get 2,000 hours. Like some places require a lot, and it's all about balance too, because you don't want to spend your whole college just trying to get all these hours. And I think that you should still have fun and just, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. When I was an undergrad, I really didn't have anyone in my family to talk to about like any type of medical advice or medical profession advice. But one of my cousins actually, she went to PA school when I was in undergrad. So I would talk to her a lot just because I had no guidance of when to start working, what classes to take and all that. So I would talk to her a lot, and then also just research on my own and looking up what prerequisites certain schools have and stuff like that.
I also think that, I don't know about you guys, if anyone took a year off between undergrad and applying to PA school, but I feel like a lot of people do that. If you're a junior or senior in undergrad and you're just now figuring out that that's what you want to do, there's absolutely no problem in taking a year to work as a medical assistant or a CNA or something after undergrad. Take a year off, make some money, take a break from studying because you're about to jump right back into it. So there's you have a year or two gap that you can get those hours if you don't feel like you're able to do that in undergrad. And then other factors in deciding where you want to apply, I guess, is more like location and so there's a lot of factors. But I guess in terms of when to start thinking about it, I would say hours for working and then prereqs are your two things to think about.
For those of us joining, for students here joining and don't know necessarily what clinical hours are or patient care hours are, can you talk about what those specific experiences look like and what are some things that you all did to get clinical hours or patient care, patient contact hours?
So I think
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, I think for most schools, they require paid clinical hours, meaning you're working in some sort of clinical aspect. It's not volunteering and it's not shadowing. There's a lot of variation. Some schools don't set a number of hours. Some schools say like 1,500 or 2,000. And so those can be jobs like medical assistant, nursing assistant, scribing. Some schools don't even accept scribing, I think. I'm not sure about LMU, considering that as paid clinical hours. And then they also like shadowing hours, which is, you just self-explanatory shadowing, doctors or PAs. So there's you have to differentiate between volunteering and shadowing hours versus like the clinical patient care experience hours. You guys probably know more than I do in terms of, you're closer to the application process than I am, so you guys can probably speak more to it or what LMU required. I know my school, I went to Arcadia University in Philly, and they didn't actually state a specific number of hours for clinical experience, but you had to have both clinical hours and shadowing hours. So you had to log that in your application as to.
Remember the number of hours for here?
Mhm.
Off the top of my head, I don't remember the number of hours, but yes, Kathy's right. So make sure you like log all of your direct patient contact hours, all of your volunteer hours, all of your shadowing hours. So for volunteer hours, I had patient contact, volunteer, and then non-patient contact for volunteer as well. So I was a campus tour guide and volunteered at like a soup kitchen and talked to elementary students and like read to them. So that was like my volunteer non-patient hours. And then also after undergrad, I went to Mexico for a week and ran like a makeshift pharmacy, did vital signs, checked blood sugars, and shadowed doctors and PA. So that was like my volunteer and shadow hours there. And then for my direct patient contact hours, scribing, which some schools count that as contact and others don't, but I learned a whole lot following PAs into the room and seeing their patient interactions there. And then also PTO, T-Tech, I was tons of patient care hours there. And then being a CNA, drawing labs, doing vital signs, talking to nurses, doctors, PAs, NPs, just getting the whole scope of practice there. It was a lot of hours there.
I did some volunteer hours with a kidney foundation and worked at some of the RAM clinics, which I think you can kind of count those as like direct patient care if it's something that you are like directly working with the patient. And then I worked at Greater Knoxville ENT throughout all of undergrad to get my direct patient care hours specifically. And then I think LMU did have like a completely separate window for shadowing.
Yes.
So I shadowed a dermatologist and a cardiologist, but be careful because I know that the LMU PA program required specifically that you shadowed a PA for a certain amount of hours, but here it was just shadowing. So you also should look at that to see if they have specific requirements for who you have to shadow.
Yeah. So I did, I worked in a nuclear cardiology center. So I was like helping patients with their EKGs and doing blood pressures. So doing a lot of that work. And then I did a little bit of research on infants, so 3 to 4 month olds. And so that is where I gained like a bunch of my contact hours. And then my volunteer hours came from campus things. So putting on events and fundraisers and going to orphanages and helping just brighten their days and things like that. So a lot of my hours did come, like, I guess they were separate, like how you were saying. Yeah.
There was a question in the chat asking you all to talk about what were your clinical hours and how long was the training to be able to do it. And I believe, you know, with things like being a CNA, a medical assistant, those generally require some training beforehand. For anyone who did that, what was the training process like?
Okay, so when I was a CNA, we had, obviously on-hand training. So another CNA would take me to different patients' rooms and show me how to properly check vitals, draw labs, check blood sugars, just interacting with patients, proper bedside manner, stuff like that. And then also EMR, electronic medical records. We would have to chart everything we did with the patients and stuff. So we had like a separate course outside of the hospital. It's called Epic Training. That was the system that we used at the hospital. So just learning how to properly document stuff, and which if you were to become a CNA medical assistant, they would have courses and have checkoffs for you and kind of have like a mentor for you the first month or two.
I know there are some programs, that are about maybe like, would y'all say a month or a couple?
CNA?
Yeah,
Like
CNA.
2 or 3 months.
Yeah, 2 or 3 months that people do. I knew that I wanted to go to PA school right after undergrad. So I was like, oh, I don't have time for that. So I just talked to family, friends, and they got me in contact with the hospital, and they just trained me there and taught me everything I needed to do for the job. And so that's another way to do it.
Yeah, I got hired on as a medical assistant, but I have no medical assistant license. So kind of got lucky with that one.
Yeah, different states do different things, but Tennessee's good for that.
I worked as a medical assistant and actually got like a certification through UT. while I was still working down in Knoxville. You're not required as a medical assistant to have any sort of certification, so you can just find a job if you can just apply, or if you have connections. So mine was like an 8-week course or something, but it did just teach basics like vitals, phlebotomy, like stuff like that, which was nice because I was kind of coming from a like non-medical world at all. So I did that and then started applying for medical assistant jobs. I ended up moving up to New Jersey with my now husband for his job. And I ended up working up here for about a year to a year and a half while I was applying to PA school, like during that cycle of applying. So I guess that ended up being, I'm not sure how many hours that ended up being, but it was about a year and a half of working, which you can do during summers in undergrad, or you could do it all at once after school. I mean, it's totally up to you. There's that flexibility of when you're able to work. So that's what I did.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend just Googling PAs in your area and emailing them. That's what I did, just because I really didn't have any connections in Louisville to many PAs. So I found one about 10 minutes from where I lived in Louisville, and she was a pediatric PA. Just emailed her. She emailed me back like the next day, told me her availability. I told her my availability. With my current work schedule, I was able to come in 3 times a week, and then sometimes Saturday mornings, and it would end up being like 10 hours a week I ended up staying there like a long time. And then she ended up letting me like do hands-on stuff with kids as well. So, and now she writes my recommendation letter. So just building those connections that way.
And you could even call local medical offices. I mean, I know that's kind of intimidating to just cold call a place, but a family practice and ask, I'm a student at UT. I was just wondering if there was anybody there that would let me shadow for a couple days. I mean, I used family friends, like friends of my parents whose kids were PAs, or, just kind of distant connections for shadowing. But you can also just reach out to, anyone, or if you go to your own doctor's office, ask them, it's, yeah, so there's ways to do it. Yeah. And then I think there's another question about how important was your GPA when applying for PA school. You guys will have to speak more to this than I will. I think they do it as like a science GPA and a total GPA. And I feel like with that and the GRE, it's like if you have a decent GPA, then you're fine. I don't think you necessarily need a 4.0. But I think that if you're in the 3s area, I wouldn't go out of your way to take extra classes just to try to bump that up unless it's actually decently low. I don't know if you guys can speak to that more than I can.
Yes, definitely. I'll be honest, I've never been the 4.0 student. I graduated with a 3.5. My science was around 3.2, 3.3, I think. My GRE score, I can't remember the actual number. It was around average. I know a lot of schools are actually phasing out the GRE and they're going to, what's it called? The
PCAT, I think.
Yeah, the PCAT now, which we didn't have to take, but we got accepted before that actually started. And yeah, a lot of schools look at basically every single thing in your application as opposed to, they have a 4.0 versus a 3.0. They want to see like all your experiences, where you worked, where you volunteered, shadowed, and get to know you in interviews and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing that makes PA schools different, is the emphasis on your experience, your hands-on experience, your hours, in comparison to other medical programs. So GPA is kind of like, okay, it's there, but I don't think they're gonna be like, all right, they have a 3.9, you have a 3.8, so you're not gonna get in. I think it's more like, what experience do you have? What type of person are you? What are your values? Does it match the school's mission statement? Things like that.
Yeah, also, when I started undergrad, I think my first semester was like a 3.0, which was like the lowest ever. I was not used to like getting C's and all that stuff. I was super frustrated. And then like my last year and a half, it was like straight 4.0, well, close to 4.0. So they just like, I guess the resilience of it's like starting off kind of low and then getting up higher and getting better, and with harder classes doing better in the harder classes as opposed to some of the gen eds.
Yeah. And you can I don't know if other schools are like this, but I called LMU after I got my GRE back, and I was like, I just don't know. Like, I got, I think, an average, but I was trying to see if like they think I should retake it. And she like asked me a few other questions about my application, and like she gave me honest feedback, and she was like, no, you should be fine. Like, don't worry about retaking it. So if you are like on the fence on whether you should retake a class or a GRE, maybe try reaching out to your school. And then also, I don't know if other schools do this, but LMU has a section on their website that says like specific classes and other credentials that would make you be like more highly considered to them. And they have like a few classes on there, but they also have patient care hour diversity on there. So just like different specialties, like if you compared to just like working in one specialty, if you did like ENT, cardio, derm, they would be more likely to consider you.
That's great advice about the GPA, because I know that's very stressful for students, especially if they're not, getting the grades that they maybe did in high school, and they're worried if that's going to make them less attractive. But I have also heard that as well, that the GRE is getting, phased out for some PA programs. A student asked if your test scores for the ACT or SAT are important, but those are not used for PA programs. That's kind of what the GRE is. It's like a graduate school exam, sort of like an advanced ACT, SAT experience. But it definitely seems like overall, at least from all of your experiences, it's a very holistic review process when it comes to applications to PA programs, which is great to hear, especially with the emphasis on experiences outside of the classroom. Someone asked a question, how do you log your hours? Did anyone have like a particularly unique way on how they logged their different type of clinical hours, patient care hours, volunteering, things like that?
So what I did whenever I shadowed the pediatric PA in Louisville I was with, usually she had a student that was with her like on rotation. She was like also a preceptor. So I would go into like exam rooms with her, and I would just like jot down a few things, like what the patient presented with, any medicine she was thinking about. And then she would ask me questions, like what I would do in that situation. So I would just like kind of write down like a few bullet points just about that day or that case. And then I would just at the top write the number of hours. So I just logged it that way. And then whenever it came time to like actually apply to schools, some schools have supplemental applications. So I would just put all those hours on the supplemental application. And then also on CASPA, there's a section for that as well. So that's how I tracked mine.
I checked the chart that the Kinese practicum class at UT, that was my first shadowing experience, and they gave you a chart that you had to fill out, and I just took that and ran with it for the rest. I think you just had to write where you were, who you were under, and then the day or like the time that you did that day, and then it had like an Excel sheet where it would add it all up for you. And then if you are going to be doing it over a lot of time, I would just put like a quick synopsis of like kind of what they let you do there, just so when you do go back to your application, you can be like, oh, that was direct, that wasn't really direct.
Yeah, I just made my own chart, opened up Google Docs, and then put the date, and then where I was, and then how long I was there. And then when I was done working there, I had my supervisor sign it just to have that. So
yeah, I just kept a spreadsheet on my own of just like hours and where I was. And then I think as far as, so someone asked what CASPA was. That's just like, I guess, when you're applying to undergrad, there's like the generic application that you can go to multiple colleges for. That's what CASPA does. So CASPA is just like a general application for PA school that basically has all your basic information, and then certain schools will have supplemental applications to go along with that. So with CASPA, you'll have like your essay and all of that, and then other schools will have other little bits and pieces to it. But within CASPA, you just manually put in hours, and whether it's like direct or indirect patient care, or volunteering or shadowing. And I think a couple of the schools I applied to actually had like a form I had to get signed by like my employer stating that I actually, like worked there. But for the majority of actually the application process, it is just you manually putting in your hours. So really, you just need to keep track of it, whatever way is easiest for you to then be able to put that into your application.
It's kind of like the Common App for undergrad students, but for PA programs. Absolutely. There was a question about if undergraduate students who are interested in PA school should maybe focus on any type of undergraduate research experiences, or if that's not really important and they should focus more on their prerequisites and clinical hours.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
At my school, I was biology pre-health, but for some reason our professors really emphasized research. I think because they did research all the time. So I got an internship my first summer, and I was supposed to be doing some toxicology research, but I knew I wanted to go to PA school, but I couldn't find like any hands-on experience that summer. So I just like pleaded with the board of like my summer research program, and they let me work in a center that was doing research on babies. So it was still kind of like interacting with patients, measuring them, weighing them. And so I kind of like tried to finesse the system and still get hands-on experience, but I really wouldn't worry too much about getting research experience at all, unless like that's just the situation you're in, and then like work your way around it. But I don't know, what would y'all say?
Yeah, my first job out of college, I was a PTOT tech at a pediatric spinal cord center in Louisville. And there were like 10 techs, a few nurses, PTs, and OTs. And some of the techs like focus on research, and other techs focused more on like the hands-on and working with the kids. And that was my role. And I would help with research as needed or time to time. And I explained that, but my main role was like direct patient care and the physical therapy aspect of it. So research, I really wouldn't focus on it, but if you enjoy that and like that, you can also explain that in interviews.
Yeah, I did research, but that was before I wanted to go to PA school. And I don't even think on my application, my research didn't even fall in like the patient care. So it was probably just another blimp on their radar, really. So I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Yeah, I think it's more about patient care experience. They want to see that you are interested in healthcare and working with people and patients, and what you did to achieve that. So unless you're very passionate about research and want to be able to squeeze them both in, I would focus more on the patient care aspect.
Definitely. I had classmates that worked PRN during their semester that they wanted. I think they were required to work like 3 or 4 shifts every 6 weeks. So that was plenty of time. So if they wanted to work like a 12-hour shift on a Saturday or a 12-hour shift on a Wednesday or something like that, every few weeks they would do that just to gain hours that way.
We have a clarifying question in the chat asking if the shadowing hours for PA schools, can they be shadowing from a nurse practitioner, or do those shadowing hours have to be from shadowing a PA specifically or a physician specifically?
So that's kind of what I touched on earlier. Another thing that you should look at on the applications, because LMU Knoxville, you could shadow anyone. LMU Harrogate, you had to shadow. I think you had to get like 80 shadowing hours, but then 40 specifically had to be from a PA. So it's something like that. But here, no requirements. So definitely just look at your school and see what they have to say.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I shadowed 2 PAs in their own clinics. I shadowed a doctor, and then when I scribed, I was with doctors, PAs, and nurse practitioners. And some of that I counted as shadowing hours. So it depends on the school, but yes, make sure you get a certain amount of shadowing hours from a PA at least, but just having an overall understanding of like what the role is of a PA as well is helpful.
Yeah. I would say the same thing. Yeah. I think if NP is the only thing that you can do, then go ahead and do it. But I would definitely try to get PA, because that's actually what you're going to be doing. That's what you want to do. And, we do things a little bit different than them. So I think PA would, stand out a little bit more in your application.
We got a question about what is the experience like being a PA student? Like, what do your classes look like? Can you all share about that experience actually being in PA school?
What do they call it? A pressure cooker. That's what our teachers love to say.
Yes.
It's a pressure cooker, and it's drinking water through a fire hydrant. But I like, it's a lot, but I think that there's definitely still time to have fun. And which I think is like an important thing, because you're going to be going to school 8 to 5, which is one thing that's like really different from undergrad, and even really different from a job, because I graduated a semester early, worked for a year 8 to 5, but actually being in class from 8 to 5 and having to use your brain, where I feel like work becomes kind of mindless. It's just a completely different ball game. But yeah, I mean, what do you guys
We're
think?
also not in class, well, in lecture 8 to 5. We'll be in the donor lab or studying, or we'll have small group activities or just other things as well. It depends on like what block or what body system we're learning at that point as well.
Yeah.
But yes, basically be flexible 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, prepared to work, grind, study.
Yeah.
You pretty much, sorry, you stay with like your whole class though. It's not like undergrad where you like pick your schedule, like they give us our schedule.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Basically, like we have maybe like 78 people in our cohort, and we're all in the big lecture hall all together at the same time. And yeah, we do small group activities. I was gonna say something else, but I forgot. But yeah, we're always together. Oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say. There's no like getting left behind and like, oh, just take a class next semester. It's like, oh no, we're taking the same classes every semester together. So
Mine was the same, and it was pretty much 8 or 9 a.m. to about 4 or 5 p.m. every single day. And then you go home and like maybe go to the gym, eat dinner, and then study. I guess being on the other side of it, I can tell you that you're not going to remember everything you've learned, and that's okay. And you basically will learn it all on the job. You'll learn. So basically you get all this information thrown at you in didactic year, and you're just like, how am I ever going to remember all this? And then you go into your clinical rotations and things start getting put into place because you're seeing it in real life. So things start making connections there. But then you graduate and you get a job and you still feel like you have no idea what you're doing. So someone said, I feel intimidated by the health field. How did you overcome that? I still haven't. So I feel like it's the healthcare field. I mean, it's gigantic and you're never going to know. I think you just have to accept that you're going to be learning the rest of your life. Like it's an ongoing career. You're always going to be learning. You're never going to know everything. It's not black and white. There's no right answer for everything when you're treating a patient. So I think just trying to embrace it and being willing to say when you don't know something. I do that every day now. So yeah, it's going to feel like a lot in school, and then it's going to still continue to feel like a lot, but it's worth it. And it'll start making sense and you'll start learning on the job and all that. So
I feel like that's good advice for me personally.
yeah, are you guys in didactic year or clinical year?
didactic.
Okay. Yeah. So right now you just are learning on paper and it's just overwhelming and all you do is study, but you'll get there with clinical year. So there's a light at the end of the tunnel, I guess I can tell you.
So just for clarification purposes, what is didactic year? What is clinical year? And how many years is PA school?
So my program was 2 years. Most are 2.5, some are 3. Didactic year is basically the year of class. So you have 1 full year of 3 semesters basically of class. And like they said, it's not like you're signing up for classes, you were just given your schedule. So our first semester was a lot of basics, like you have your anatomy and your physiology. And then from there, throughout didactic year, things get a little bit more specific. Like you have a course only on emergency medicine or a course only on surgery. So you always have every semester I had a course on pharmacology, which was just constant, medications. So 1 full year of class and then 1 full year, at least for me, of clinical rotations. So that definitely differs. You guys can speak to what LMU's curriculum does. My school did, COVID ruined it all, but what was supposed to happen was 11 clinical rotations. So we had 7 core rotations, 7 4-week core rotations, which were, family medicine, emergency medicine, surgery, pediatrics, behavioral health, OBGYN, and another one that I'm blanking on. And then we had four extra rotations that we could basically apply for to have as our more specialized, if you wanted to go into something, you could basically choose an elective for our four. So I know some places do less, but they're longer rotations. So you guys can speak to what LMU does, but that's how our clinical year was.
Sounds like
Pretty
the
much the
same.
exact same.
Yeah, I think
Except
we
for I think
have,
maybe 2 electives.
yeah, I think we have 2 electives, 12 rotations, 4 weeks each, but we haven't really gotten to the talk of
Yeah.
clinicals at all. I think that's next month. We're gonna speak more about that.
Yeah.
They want us to get through didactic first, since it's a lot.
There was a question about when you all applied to PA school. Was it, for example, for medical school, students apply like at the end of their junior year because it's like a year-long application process. What was the timeline for applying to PA school like?
I just know that every school's deadline is different, so make sure you know that some schools' deadlines will be midsummer, some will be early fall, in the winter. It really depends. I just know that CASPA overall, I could be wrong, opens April 1st.
Yeah.
So
And then they're all due different because some of them start in January, we start in October. I think the Harrogate campus starts in March.
Yeah.
So they all start different, so they all end different. So
yeah, I personally, when I first applied, I applied my senior year of undergrad. So that was in spring of 18. And I knew some others, they applied at the end of their junior years just because they only needed a few more classes. I know some people that applied a year after they graduated from undergrad. It really just depends on your preference, really.
rolling application though, so when it opens in April, obviously, if you applied right at April, you would be the first that they would see. But I also think you can go in potentially and work on it before, maybe not.
I don't know. Maybe.
I know that they just changed it where you can like carry
okay.
over your whole
Oh,
application,
that's nice.
like if you have to reapply again. But I mean, it opened in April. I think I applied for LMU in like October. So no,
Same.
I mean, rolling application, yes, but not to say that if you get it in, right? I applied to the Harrogate campus probably a week before it was due.
Really?
So
Okay.
you can still throw your application out there just because it's rolling doesn't mean they've probably already filled their seats.
Yeah, I would definitely say go ahead and look at the school you want to go to's website and see when theirs is due because it can be a little confusing. But I applied the spring semester of my junior year because I knew I wanted to start right after my senior year. So by the time that came around.
I also think I made like a chart of like, these are the schools that I'm interested in. These are the requirements. These are their shadowing hours. This is when their applications due by. Do they have a supplemental application? Yes, this is when that's due by. So that way you could just stay on top of everything.
And Cass was really, really good at organizing everything as well.
Yeah.
And it saves as you go. You don't have to complete it all in one sitting. It took me months.
Yeah.
My first advice would be make sure you have people to write your recommendation letters, have good connections in that way. And then also right when it opens April 1st, just have some sort of rough draft of your personal statement. You don't want to wait until the day before someone's application is due, and start writing an essay. You want to have a foundation of that, and then several people read it and make sure it's pretty good because they're going to talk about that in your interviews most likely.
That was easily the hardest part of the application for me.
Personal statement.
For sure, yeah.
Not fun.
Yeah, I do not like writing.
I hope that answered everything.
There are a few more questions. We have about 10 minutes left. So anyone else who wants to ask any questions, go ahead and type those in the chat so we can try to answer them before time is up. The next question is, does anyone have any tips for being successful in PA school? How to study, balance work, life? Any suggestions for that?
Get an iPad.
Yeah.
I swear everyone in our class has an iPad. But I mean, really though, because they give us their PowerPoints and you do not want to be writing all that out. I mean, some people do, I'm one of them afterwards, but you don't have time in the moment, and the iPad is just, Otherwise you'll be going through a lot of paper because I know we had one PowerPoint that was 400 slides. So you don't want to be printing that out.
Yeah.
But just taking time to study by yourself, study with groups, different study methods. Definitely, I think we all would say get the Pants Prep Pearl books, because those are just nice, quick little summaries of everything that you're going over. And then the school provides us like question banks. I think studying the material in multiple different ways helps you be able to recognize it in whatever way that they could possibly present it to you.
Yeah.
I feel.
Oh,
Go ahead, finish. Are you good?
I was just gonna say, come up with like a schedule that you know will work best for you. And I think the biggest thing for me is not to compare myself to other people. We have like 70 people in our class, and there's 70 different ways to do PA school. So don't compare. What works for you is the right thing for you, and do not compare yourself to other people. There are multiple ways to get A's, or multiple ways to get B's, or multiple ways to get C's. And just do what works for you, and stay consistent with your own schedule, and try to incorporate relaxation things to do when you can.
Definitely.
Yeah, I was gonna say, figure out what way of studying works best for you and just stick with it, because I feel like there are 1,000+ resources for you from the school. Someone's going to give you old notes. You're going to have Pants Prep Pearls, which is a book that someone created to study for the pants, which is the board exam. You don't need to even worry about that right now. But anyways, like, you're going to have so many resources. It's going to be almost overwhelming because you feel like you need to look at everything and study everything, but just try to focus on one way that works for you. And my biggest advice is you just have to pass. Like, we are all probably type A people here that are have high GPAs and like are naturally trying to be successful. You literally just have to pass PA school. Like, there's no ranking system there. Your job will never know your GPA. You will barely know your GPA unless you go look for it on your transcript. Like, it doesn't matter. Your GPA in PA school won't matter unless, you just pass. So I feel like to me, that took a lot of stress off of me, when it's like, there's so much information, you're never going to know it all. So it's just kind of like finding that work-life balance, finding the amount of studying that works for you, that isn't going to drive you over the edge. And then, just finding that sweet spot of being able to pass and finding a comfortable amount of studying that also lets you have some sort of sanity is the key.
Well said.
Just pass.
Yes, just pass.
Well, this last question in the chat is kind of a perfect one to wrap up our time together. And it's, do you have any advice that you would share with aspiring, PA students? Anything that you wish you knew about PA school before you applied, or something that you would wish you had done beforehand that you feel like would have helped you in PA school?
Let's start you.
Yeah. This is what I tell everybody. It's very small, but I would really pay attention to your medical terminology class, because in lecture, they sometimes either forget or assume we already know terms, and they don't always stop and explain what it is. So when you're studying, you'll be like Googling, study, Google, study. But if you already know those things, it'll help a ton, and then studying will be easier.
When I was going to PA school, I feel like everyone was like, brush up on your anatomy. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. But I completely agree. You shouldn't do that. I think that we're getting whatever we need from anatomy with the program.
Yeah.
Don't spend your time before PA school studying.
Spend
it having fun.
Yeah, don't study for a month or two before starting the program. Travel, have fun, see your family and friends, just because you won't be able to see them as much. Like, I went to New York, Chicago, Dallas, like Louisville, Florida. I traveled like a lot before, just because I knew I wouldn't be able to see a lot of people starting, and I haven't seen them in a while. But just have fun. No need to study.
Work and make money, because we're not allowed to work. So, and when you do need some good retail therapy, it feels even worse doing that when you have no money. So yeah, build up that money for when you need to do the retail therapy to take the load off.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing about absolutely do not study beforehand. Like you're going to do plenty of that in school. So beforehand, just travel, do everything you would like to do before you basically hunker down for 2 years. And then as far as applying to schools, I guess for me, I felt like I had to kind of decide what was my priority in terms of the schools. Like my husband lives in New Jersey, so it was like, is location what I want to base my applications on? It's also hard because it's not like PA schools are really ranked like undergraduate schools of like, this is the best school you should go to. So it's kind of hard to know, if you're trying to figure out the best school. So there's really no best school. You can look at their board passing rates, how a school does, how many students pass the boards their first time, which they all usually put on their website. So I guess if you're trying to figure out what schools to apply to, prereqs aside, try to figure out what's important to you in terms of, is location important? If they have a cadaver lab, is that important to you? And then the longevity of the program, a lot of programs are popping up, they're brand new. And I felt like I wanted to apply to a school that had been around for a while. I feel like they kind of had their system down. So for me, that was kind of important. So I guess the whole stress of prereqs and GPA and hours aside, just try to figure out what's most important to you for your school, and go by that.
That is all very great advice. It is pretty much time for the panel. I want to thank our panelists so much for taking time again out of their busy schedules to come and chat with us and share their insights. It has been incredibly helpful and insightful. If any student missed it in the chat, Alexis just shared a little bit more information about campus resources and her email address. If you'd like to reach out to her or myself, you can always email me as well, and I'll put that in the chat if anyone has any pre-health advising questions. But thank you again so much for coming. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Isabel, Elijah, and Taylor. I appreciate it so much. And that pretty much ends our time. So yeah, I'll stop.
Thank you all.
Thank you
Good
for
luck.
having us.
Bye.